The Place to Be podcast is now a proud member of the History of WWE.com website. The History of WWE.com features thousands of complete cards and detailed results from throughout wrestling history from multiple major promotions. In addition to outstanding columns and reviews, it is now also the official home of the Place to Be podcast and Scott and Justin's pay-per-view reviews. Visit us now at thehistoryofwwe.com or on Facebook by searching for the Place to Be podcast or the History of WWE. The Place to Be is now the History of WWE.
Yeah, Frank here, he's got his own billiard room.
Yes, it's what do you call it, Kramer? The billiard room? No. The name. The billiard? Not the billiards. It was, come on, Rudy, come on. We call it the place to be. The place to be, yes, it's the place to be. Then I shall be there.
Now, it's time. Live and in living color. The Grandy Man can.
Time to play the game!
Well, you always left me satisfied and smiling, so...
That's what she said.
Why do I want this?
Yeah.
Because I want to make bank, bro. I want to get ass. I want to drive a Range Rover.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is now time for the Place to Be podcast. And now your hosts, Justin Rosero and Scott Criscolo.
Place to Be Nation, welcome to another great episode of the Place to Be podcast. I am your co-host, Justin Rosero. And with me, as always, is the man I hope is ready to feel the heat. And that is my PIC, Scotty Criscolo. Scott, how you doing tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Rosero, and good evening, everyone, to our Place to Be podcast. We were so excited to do this one. We're much earlier than normal. Very rarely we crack it out on a Sunday evening, but whenever the vault is twinkling and gleaming its light, we always feel the need to have to open it regardless of the day of the week. And tonight, on the Place to Be podcast, we do indeed open up the Vintage Vault. We know everyone looks forward to it. Obviously, the schedule this week is a little different because we have a huge special edition of the Place to Be podcast coming up this week. We'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yes.
But tonight, we open up the vault. We have the special effect. We're going to do it tonight, or will we wait? Or do you already have?
Well, I tried it last time, and I don't know. It was kind of barely audible. So.
All right, we'll have to get the special effect soon. But tonight, as Justin mentioned, we shall feel the heat.
Of course, Vince McMahon welcomes us inside the Philadelphia Spectrum on this Monday night in 1990, August 27th to be exact. Of course, the announcers here are Vince McMahon and Roddy Piper. So why don't we take a moment before we get into the rest of the details of the show and discuss the mix-up in the commentary booth here. Of course, for the first time, I believe on pay-per-view since, WrestleMania 2, we have Vince McMahon in the booth. He hasn't done a show, I don't think, since then.
Yes, you are correct. This is his first pay-per-view in over 4 years. Mm-hmm. Another second straight year that Gorilla gets the night off in August. And Vince sits in the booth. For his color commentator, a definite change of pace here. Obviously, with wipe the tear from my eye, the departure of Jesse the Body Ventura, who would actually take almost a year and a half off.
Yes. From
commentating. He does not make his debut in WCW until Clash of the Champions. I think it's 12.
Well, it's around this time, though, that he was mayor, right, of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota?
Yes, he was mayor of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, so he handled that. But he would not make his premiere in WCW until January of 1992. And I don't remember what Clash it was. Clash, 13 or 14, something like that. But his first pay-per-view debut would be like Super Brawl 2, I think it is, or something like that. So they were looking for a new color commentator. And Bobby Heenan, who usually does color commentary, obviously has experience in it, doing it with Gorilla Monsoon on house shows and Challenge, right?
Yeah, he was doing
did
Challenge since like 86.
Yes. Speaking of 86, as usual, we like to kind of to let our listeners in on what's going on inside the Place to Be podcast. Usually Mr. Rozzero and I usually have something playing in the background to kind of motivate us. I don't know what you have going on in the background right now. I have the TNT before WrestleMania 2, and then they're actually showing the awesome King Kong Bundy beatdown of Hulk Hogan on that Saturday Night's Main Event in Phoenix.
Very nice.
Speaking of Jesse, he goes, "Wow, McMahon, it's like the cavalry's come in." All right. We have to stop with Jesse because he's gone now. But he is gone for about a year and a half from announcing, and he debuts in WCW in 1992. So tonight, on this night, October 27th, 1990, as Justin mentioned, from the Spectrum in Philadelphia, our first foray into the city of brotherly love, Vince puts the Hot Rod in the booth. No, not Kieran Polland. The other Hot Rod.
I don't know if Karen was even born at this show.
Probably not.
Well,
Roddy Piper.
Roddy had actually started announcing Superstars with Vince.
Yeah.
So that booth, obviously, they just kept that going onto the show. So I want to, while you're talking more about the setup of the show, I'm going to find out exactly. I want to get the exact date, actually, of Jesse's final show.
Okay. So let me give everyone the particulars, as I always do. Let us set the scene, as Justin did mention. August 27th.
Actually, before we even go, I already found it. It's
Okay.
It was taped July 16th, but August 18th features Jesse Ventura's last appearance on WWF TV for 8 years, and then the next week, actually taped at the Providence Civic Center on 8/8, aired on 8/25, featured Roddy Piper taking over Jesse Ventura's commentary position along Vince McMahon after Ventura was fired. So August 25th was Roddy Piper's first Superstars announcing. So that was actually 2 days before this show. So,
Okay.
And Jesse, we were talking about it last time. Jesse did pretty much go right up until SummerSlam.
Okay. And was he actually fired? That's an odd way to put it. Was he actually fired? I thought he quit. Was he fired?
Well, technically, maybe. I think they had a dispute over his payments, right? And I think Vince
Cut him loose?
technically fired him, yeah.
Yeah, that probably is what it was. So, let us paint the picture. Give you the particulars, as Justin mentioned. August 27th, 1990, from the venerable Spectrum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Again, our first, but certainly not last, foray into the city of brotherly love. The attendance, a pretty hot one, actually, 19,304. Pretty good crowd, actually. Pretty good crowd.
Okay, actually,
Philly?
here's the deal with Jesse, just before,
Okay.
so we can put this away. Following a dispute with Vince McMahon over the use of his image for promoting a Sega product, McMahon, who had a contract with rival company Nintendo at the time, released Ventura from the company in August 1990. He made his WCW debut at the February 1992 Super Brawl 2. Was his first show as a WCW announcer. So, and then of course Jesse would go ahead and win $801,000 in back payments for royalties on videotapes that he was used. So that was in 1991. So he pretty much got revenge right away for being released.
Yes. So Super Brawl would be his first pay-per-view appearance, but apparently from what I read, he does do a Clash. His first big show as an announcer is Clash. It's the one before Super Brawl, so it's like Clash.
Oh, so
it's like,
well, because this one says he joined WCW at Super Brawl 2.
See, all right. Well, I read that he. Well, then again, I took it off Wiki, and who knows what knucklehead probably wrote it.
No, this is off Wiki.
Oh, well, if you go to the Clashes,
okay.
It says that Jesse Ventura makes his announcing debut at that. It's the first Clash of 1992, so it's like Clash 13, I think, or 14, something like that. And Super Brawl is his first pay-per-view as an announcer.
Okay, yeah, because that made it seem like he made his debut.
Yeah. Well, in any event, he does start in the beginning of 1992.
Yes. Oh, yeah, actually, yeah, this one says right here. Event was set up for Super Brawl until the WCW debut of Jesse Ventura, January 21st, 92, Clash 18.
Yep, so there you go.
Okay.
So, we officially put, as much as it breaks both our hearts immensely,
yeah, we're done with Jesse Ventura now.
We have put Jesse the Body to bed. We will not talk about him for...
9 years.
Jesus, almost 9 years. Yep. Exactly 9 years.
Yep.
So, you're now, again, a great attendance, 19,304. Pretty hot crowd, actually. But it is Philly. We know how much they love their wrestling, and this will be the first, but certainly not the last time that the WWF/E journeys into Philadelphia. And I believe the next time they're in Philadelphia is much less hospitable than this time. The buy rate, 3.8. And again, your announcer is Vince McMahon and Rowdy Roddy Piper. Let's take a look at the number of matches. There are a total of 10 matches. This time we'll let Justin open. We kind of flip-flop. Usually we flip-flop even and odd. So why don't you open the show and tell us about our opener, because it does involve actually one of your favorite tag teams. So.
Yes. Our opener is a tag team contest between Power and Glory and the Rockers. Power and Glory is a brand new team that had formed in April of 1990. Paul Roma, who at this point was pretty much one of the bigger jobber to the stars that they had, never really won much at all, had just lost another match to Dino Bravo, and he was being helped up by his friends, the Rockers, who happened to be coming. I think they were coming down to the ring for a match, and Roma was still just kind of knocked out at ringside. Roma wanted no help and began arguing with them. So Hercules came out to calm things down, it seemed, but instead he sided with Roma, and the duo started attacking the Rockers. A week later, they were announced as a new heel team named Power and Glory, and Slick debuted as their manager. So, new heel team in the mix here, and as Scott said, one of my favorites. These two guys had some really good chemistry together, and this tag team really saved Hercules, I think, who was really starting to fade after his hot face turn at the end of '88. At this point, he was kind of wearing thin a little bit. And Roma obviously was floating around doing nothing. So this was a good team to rejuvenate these two guys, and they really worked hard, and they had good chemistry. It was a good mix. You had the grizzled Power veteran and Hercules, and then the young, good-looking Paul Roma, who could kind of do a little bit of the high flying and other moves. So of course the finisher was the awesome Powerplex, where Hercules would hit a suplex and Paul Roma would come crashing off the top with a splash. Pretty much as soon as Hercules hit the mat, he was down on top of the guy. So the timing was always great on that move.
Right.
So also interestingly going on around this time was that Shawn Michaels had a serious knee injury. So over house shows, leading up to the show and following the show, Shane Douglas, who was a newcomer to WWF, would actually fill in for Shawn, and him and Mark Jannetty wrestled as the new Rockers for a while. And we see that here because Shawn Michaels actually never gets in this match. As soon as the Rockers get to the ring, Power and Glory attacks, and Hercules bashes Shawn in the knee with his chain. So Shawn rides on the floor for the 6-minute duration of the match, and the Powers of Pain, Power and Glory mercilessly beat Jannetty down. And once again, we have another great. We've mentioned this a couple times before when we have another great, basically handicap match. On pay-per-view. But Jannetty does a great job selling, making a few comeback attempts, and Power and Glory's offense, I always enjoyed it. I thought they were very crisp, and I like every time Shawn was starting to get up, they go out there, just kick him in the knee and knock him back down.
Right.
And this is a pretty dominant win for Power and Glory, really, to really wipe out the Rockers in 6 minutes and finish them off with their finisher. This is a really strong push for them.
Yeah, clearly, obviously, brand new tag team things were in place for them. The Rockers are one of those teams, I hate to say it, you never think a tag team is bulletproof, but obviously the fans loved Shawn and Marty enough to where winning and losing was irrelevant to them. So they just, as long as they put on a good show, that was pretty much enough for the fans. And speaking, I just have to mention this because this match on paper, and I'm going to have it on in the background while we're talking, on this tape that I'm playing that's just coming up in the background, is a singles match from September of 1985. Now, just get this in the back of your minds, folks. Dynamite Kid versus Bret Hart.
Wow.
Going on in the background right now. September of 1985 from the Cap Center. So just got that going to the best. So let's get now with a great tag match here and some of the great tag matches to come on this show. I'm getting the juices are flowing right now. So anyway, yes, I never jumped on Power and Glory's bandwagon as much as you did. But again, you and I were different phases of fandom at this point. You were, again, brand new, right on the scene, so you were hopping on all the new stuff, which is awesome because fans like you were good to teams like this. Me, I was like, I didn't mind them. I didn't hop on them immediately, but I did like their chemistry, and they actually were a good team together.
I agree.
I don't think anybody expected the two of them to have that good of chemistry together that they did here.
And of course, they always had their swank cut-off white beater shirts.
Yes, their white beater
Power and Glory
shirts.
And the lightning bolts on them. So
yes.
they had a cool look.
I don't know if they ever actually made T-shirts for them. It would have been cool if they did.
They may have had one or two.
It's to me, it feels like the Rockers' 1990 was like the Hart Foundation's 1989.
Yes,
that they kind of spent the year kind of in limbo, and then 91 they really picked up their steam, which is funny because we know what would happen, and we'll get to that when we get there. Yeah. But
and we'll also at our next show kind of tease it here. There's a big backstage brouhaha with the Rockers and the eventual new champions crown in the show. With a phantom title change and all other kind of goings on.
Yes,
So we'll talk about
very,
that.
very well-known story.
Yeah.
On multiple DVDs and multiple, and we'll get into that though when we do Survivor
show,
Series. Yep. But a good opener, solid, nothing crazy, only 6 minutes, but good enough to get the crowd hot. Again, we're in Philadelphia, Northeast. Give them something relatively watchable, and they'll hop on it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, 5 years later, that would change, but at least here, they did a pretty good job of getting the crowd excited. So, good opener, good debut for Power and Glory, and the Rockers are kind of spinning their wheels a little bit again, kind of like the Hart Foundation did in 1989. So there's your opener. Crowd again really jumped on it. Power and Glory, the new hot heel tag team, and you know what? As much as we bust the guy Stones for actually being a horseman, which is kind of a joke in itself, I applaud Paul Roma for really helping take this team to new heights. I don't think he gets enough credit sometimes. I think he gets crapped on a lot because he's Paul Roma.
Yeah, I agree.
But really, he should get a lot of credit for really helping get this team over with Hercules.
Yeah, I think this is definitely his. The Young Stallions were a very good team, but I think overall, as far as like importance on the card, this little 6-month run before they become kind of an afterthought, Power and Glory from here till about April, is probably his best overall run.
Right. As we normally do here in the Place to Be podcast, we'll let you know if any of these special matches are on any paper DVDs. Of course, if you have the little cooler that came out, the SummerSlam anthology, you obviously have this entire show. But if you don't, we'll let you know what matches from the show are actually on any DVDs. And honestly, there really aren't that many. This one's not.
No, yeah.
Stuff towards the end there is, but not this one.
This is on my personal DVD of matches I enjoy.
Yes, of course. Our next match is our first title match of the evening. The Intercontinental Championship is on the line. And obviously, we need a champion. As we closed out the vault last time, the Ultimate Warrior was still the Intercontinental Champion, but of course he had just won the World Wrestling Federation Championship from Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6. Well, back in those days, you couldn't hold 2 belts at once, although in the Attitude Era, guys held 3 belts at once at times.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Federation years, obviously, that kind of would water down the product. So obviously, the Ultimate Warrior forfeited vacated, if you will, the Intercontinental Championship, which leads us to one of the better and J-Fave tournaments in the history of the World Wrestling Federation. This is actually one of your favorite tournaments.
Yes.
They actually put up a tournament, and I've said this on our podcast here, I've said this on my old radio show. Everybody, if you are a solid wrestling fan, everybody is a mark for tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Tournaments are always fun because they always are either some type of schmazzy thing, or you always have a lot of drama, and you have good. A lot of times you actually have good matches, depending how the matchups go. And this one was no different. A tournament was laid out to determine a brand new World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Champion. Why don't you, because this is your tournament, why don't you lay out the participants for our listeners?
Okay, so in April, the tournament began. I believe it was filmed in April, but I think it didn't air until a little bit later, late May. The tag team, IC title tournament. I'm just trying to look up quick. Yeah, the quarters began April 28th was the first match, and it looks like there was one each week that went up right until early June. Okay. So the first round, now things get a little shaky with this tournament, but the first round, Mr. Perfect defeated Jimmy Snuka. Roddy Piper and Rick Martel fought to a double disqualification.
Which really sucked because I was hoping one of those two guys would win. When I first saw these brackets, either of those guys would have been a great champion in the double countout. And I watched it. It's actually on the WWE Classics on demand, or WWEClassics.com.
Yes.
The match actually was really good. The crowd was, remember, you and I watched it together. The crowd was actually really hot.
Yep.
And then, but the end just kind of screwed the pooch in the end. But
we had
two great guys.
Another double elimination as Dino Bravo and Brutus Beefcake were both counted out. And Tito Santana defeated the J-Fave Deluxe Hakeem. So with 2 eliminations, we went right to the finals, and that is where Tito Santana and Mr. Perfect received byes to fight for the IC title. And it was during this match that Mr. Perfect debuted a brand new manager with the Genius getting the crap kicked out of him by Brutus Beefcake at WrestleMania. He was now out the door. And Bobby the Brain Heenan ascends to the managerial position behind Mr. Perfect. Of course, they would become a very famous duo as we continue to go on over the next few years. So Bobby would help guide Mr. Perfect to a great win over Tito Santana, and he is our new Intercontinental Champion. Now, I do want to throw a little aside, as we mentioned about DVD matches. On the Best of Saturday Night's Main Event DVD, there's a tremendous IC title tournament final rematch between Mr. Perfect and Tito Santana. If you haven't seen this match, check it out, because it is really, really good stuff for Saturday Night's Main Event. Those two went all out, and Perfect retained, but Tito was really he kicked back the clock big time in that match. So great stuff there. Mr. Perfect's the new IC champion, and it looked like he was set to continue his WrestleMania feud, but Scott, you can tell us obviously that did not happen.
Yes, for those that just want to double check, the rematch is on disc 3, and it's from June 28th on Saturday Night's Main Event. So June 28th, 1990. So for those that have the DVD, it is on disc 3. So now, as we mentioned, we talked about at WrestleMania 6 how Mr. Perfect lost his first television match to Brutus Beefcake. And the Beefer, as we mentioned, as Justin and I said, was definitely on his way to something special. The guy was obviously one of the most popular on the roster, one of the bigger fan favorites, maybe one of the 3 or 4 biggest fan favorites on the team, on the roster, on the WWF team, if you will, on the roster. Mm-hmm. He was definitely in line, considering he beat Perfect, and then Perfect won the Intercontinental title in the tournament. Clearly, you could see they were lining up for another Perfect Beefcake match at SummerSlam, this time for the Intercontinental Championship. But for the second time in 3 years, well, sort of, the tables were turned on Brutus Beefcake. Although in 1988 it was more of a booking thing.
Yes.
This time around it was much more serious and much more life-threatening. 4th of July weekend in 1990, Brutus Beefcake was on a beach in Florida with fellow Floridian and former Killer B Brian Blair. They were sitting on the beach in probably Tampa, because I'm sure Beefcake lived near Hogan. So
yeah,
sure
I guess. And Brian Blair was big in Tampa, I think.
Yeah, so I'm sure it was Tampa or St. Pete, something like that. In any case, a female parasailer was parasailing on the shore in the water, obviously on the beach. I don't know if it was a gust of wind or maybe she just didn't know what she was doing, but somehow she started veering out of control onto the beach and crashed right into Beefcake. And you're thinking, hot chick falls into you. What are you going to do? Well, this wasn't exactly, love at first sight. Her knees, because she had her knees bent, went smashed right into Beefcake's face. Obviously, he got more than a scratch. He totally destroyed his face. Mm-hmm. Very severe fractures, broke both cheekbones, broke his jaw, broke his nose. It was not pretty. Not pretty whatsoever. He'd be off camera for almost a year and would not be able to compete for at least the next 3 years. So he was done. And it breaks your heart because, and I said this to you, Justin, on our last Vintage Vault, we talked about WrestleMania 6. I really now kind of understand how great this guy really was as a character. Was he the greatest wrestler on earth? He was serviceable. He was good in the ring. He wasn't anything great, but he was good. But he was definitely way over and more than deserved the opportunity to become a champion in some capacity. And this just kills you. It just breaks your heart. It's just, fate just sucks sometimes. And the Beefer was on the DL. And again, he would not come back on camera till shortly after August, I think, of 91 or summer 91. And would not hit the ring again for at least another, 2.5 years almost 3 years.
Yeah, early 93.
Yeah, so almost over 2.5 years. So we needed a new challenger for Mr. Perfect, and we need a opponent for the Intercontinental Championship here at SummerSlam. Which leads us to a debut, and actually one of the bigger debuts in quite some time. Shall I go on? Do you have something queued up, or shall I go on? I wasn't sure if you had anything queued up.
So, background music for you.
There it is. Obviously, the debut of the Texas Tornado, a.k.a. Kerry Von Erich. Now, let me ask you something. Did you even know who he was?
No.
Or debuting? No? Okay. That makes sense.
I may have seen him in a PWI. I think it was after this where I kind of started to realize who he was.
Okay. Obviously, for you older fans, Kerry Von Erich, we all know who he is, part of the The Hart family of Dallas, that being, of course, the Von Erich family, the creators, for the most part, not creators, but the family that ran world-class championship wrestling based out of Dallas in the Sportatorium, Dallas-Fort Worth area. His father, of course, Fritz. Their real name is Atkinson. Obviously, they went by Von Erich because when Fritz Von Erich, the father, the patriarch, was a wrestler, he was a heel German Nazi villain in the 50s and 60s. So and early 70s, and he almost was like Baron von Raschke, except not as old looking, and he did the duck walk and the claw and all that kind of jazz. So he went by the name Fritz Von Erich. Well, when he retired, he ended up taking the book and then took the deed and became the booker and promoter for World Class Championship Wrestling out of Dallas, Texas. Even though he probably was not the most talented of the family, he was definitely the best looking in terms of physique. He was the most chiseled. He was the most muscular. He was definitely the poster boy of the family. Even though a lot of people think Kevin and or the late David were the better wrestlers, he was the poster boy of the family. He obviously had his shining moment May 6th, 1984 at Texas Stadium in Irving for his late brother David. And like the Harts, except they had it much earlier, the Von Erichs were stricken with bad luck in their family. The oldest son, David, who was one of the star wrestlers in the family and was in line for big things within the NWA, died in Japan of severe intestinal issues. I don't know if it was hemorrhaging.
No, wasn't it? It was toxic shock syndrome, wasn't it?
No, that was the other. No, that was the other brother.
Okay.
No, that was the other brother.
Okay.
David, that was
Mike.
Mike had toxic shock. David had some type of intestinal infection. He ate too much and then drank too much, and his intestine broke or something like that. He had an intestinal problem, and it killed him in Japan. So, having said that, they did a David Von Erich memorial show on May 6th, 1984 at Texas Stadium. And on that day, Kerry Von Erich defeated the great Nature Boy Ric Flair to become the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Obviously, it was I don't want to say pity. That's not the right word. It was a
capitalization.
Kind of it was a good faith offer to the family for what happened to David. And he held the belt for only 18 days, and then Flair beat him back in Japan. Kerry was still one of the most popular guys down there in Texas. He and his family feuded with the Freebirds, probably one of the most vicious blood feuds around the world in the wrestling in all of professional wrestling in the 1980s. But obviously, as World Class started to dwindle by the late 80s, and they ended up getting swallowed up by Jerry Lawler's USW, by Memphis Professional Wrestling, Mid-South, and they ended up not Mid-South. What was the term? I can't remember the CWA, Continental Wrestling Association, the CWA. They obviously morphed into the USWA from World Class. So by then, obviously Kerry needed to sow his oats. He would become the first World Class Heavyweight Champion, and then he and Jerry Lawler, ironically, would have a consolidation, what's what I'm thinking of?
Merger.
Unification match at Super Brawl 3, one of the usual AWA dismal pay-per-views. And Lawler won the belt because Kerry was bleeding too much. So, obviously, we have... speaking of Ric Flair, what do I have rolling right now? His title loss to Bret Hart.
Very nice.
Smack 'em, whack 'em. Remember that? And for those that like that match, it's very hard to find. So, we were very lucky to get it off of the 24/7. Speaking of world champions, Kerry Von Erich would lose that title eventually, and then would move on here to the WWF in the summer of 1990. He made his TV debut on the 7/28 Saturday Night's Main Event, where he defeated Playboy Buddy Rose, who, by the way, was in the dark match of this SummerSlam against, I believe, Shane Douglas. Yes, Buddy Rose and Shane Douglas wrestled a dark match at this show. Just to let you know. On the 8-11 Superstars, Von Erich came to the ring after Mr. Perfect defeated Randy Fox and challenged him to an IC title match at SummerSlam. Perfect accepted the match the following week, just 9 days before, of course, the pay-per-view aired. Which, I don't know. Considering that Beefcake had been hurt for a good 7 weeks, you'd figure they would have thought of something, I don't know. They would have done this a little sooner. Weird, don't you think? Very strange.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure what else more they could have done without making it obvious. I don't know when they actually announced Beefcake being hurt, though, because he may have been on taped match. You know, they might have had stuff taped already that they had to air.
Right.
So they might not have actually, announced it on July 4th. So it may have, they might have had 7 weeks, after Beefcake's injury, but, I don't know if, they actually could have announced it. I'm going to try and find out when his last appearance was. But, the way they did Von Erich was fine, because, he was obviously coming in anyway. So
right.
they just really shot him up the ladder. I don't know if they had ever planned for him to even be in the IC title mix, or if they just planned for him to almost be like an attraction. Because as we'll see, his run as a main player is very, very short.
Yes, it is. Yep. So, here we go. Mr. Perfect defends his championship against the Texas Tornado.
It was July 14th, actually. They announced it on TV about Beefcake, so.
All right, so it was about 10 days. So he was out of the picture for a good 4 weeks before this happened.
Yeah, well, then the next week, on that week they just said he'd been injured. The next week on the 21st is when it was announced that despite Beefcake being injured, that Perfect would still defend the title.
Okay.
So then it was a couple weeks after that with the whole stuff with Von Erich.
Okay. So in the Spectrum, Kerry Von Erich comes to the ring, a.k.a. the Texas Tornado, and they do call it. It's not one of these weird. It's not like the Harley Race thing where Vince fakes who he really is. They do say the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich. They're not gonna, because we're not all by 1990, we're not all that dumb. We know who he is. Mm-hmm. So Vince didn't try to pull that kayfabe crap like he did in the mid 80s with people. We knew he was Kerry Von Erich. They just called him a Texas Tornado because Vince loved nicknames, and that's fine. And in a mere 5 minutes and 13 seconds, we had a new Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah, short match. I thought it was pretty energetic, though. They don't, really slow down too much, and it did a good job of making Tornado look strong. It brings a quick end to Perfect's title reign. He had a good run over the summer. This is kind of his first real high-profile match, and Tornado beats him pretty easily. But they really made Tornado look strong here. He beat him around. He hit him with the discus punch, pinned him, and that was it.
Yeah.
So nice win for Tornado. Gets his IC title reign off strongly, but unfortunately, I think it would be the biggest win that he would have during this whole run.
Yes, and this match is not on any DVDs. I thought it was on Perfects, but it's not. I didn't think it would be, but it's not on the World Class Championship Wrestling. Well, why would it be either? But not on any DVDs. Kerry Von Erich is your new champion. The place actually went crazy.
Yeah,
a hot crowd. Obviously, Perfect, the awesome heel that he is, makes it so. Obviously, Perfect's run would get better, and obviously, we'll see if he regains the title later on in the year. But again, not a great, nothing to write home about. Not as good as his Intercontinental title match 1 year from now. Mm-hmm. But we'll get to that one. But a good win for Tornado, and Perfect did his role and did it well. So kudos to Perfect for putting it over. And Tornado comes in and gets the big win, the first big win of the night, as he is the new World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Champion. So congratulations to Kerry Von Erich, who walks right in as the Tornado that he is and becomes the champion.
Right. So
our next match, I'll let you have because this is right up your alley.
Yep, the next match showed the continuation of the big mixed tag feud from WrestleMania, and that is, of course, Sapphire facing off with Queen Sherry. And the feud continued on throughout the summer. On April 14th, Dusty Rhodes was fighting a jobber. Things went to a no contest when Savage and Sherry attacked them before the match began. And Sherry actually forced Sapphire to kiss Savage's feet. She held his face down, her face down to Savage's feet. Later, as the summer went on, Sapphire began to receive mysterious gifts from a mysterious benefactor. And it looked, I think the first was July 21st. She had shown a bracelet. And then she got a fur coat and other various gifts. So Dusty was a little concerned about who was supplying his woman with these presents. But this match was announced on August 4th, and it was also set up where Dusty and Savage would fight later in the show. So here, though, Dusty Rhodes has no luck trying to track down Sapphire throughout the night. So Sherry comes out. They play Sapphire's music. She's nowhere to be found. Sherry has this ridiculous cat makeup on with this weird cat mask.
That was creepy. It was
Yes,
bizarre. It was very bizarre.
Definitely odd looking.
Yeah.
So then she screams the 10 count on the microphone, and she wins by count out. Immediately after the match, we were treated to this tremendous piece of business.
Sapphire losing that match by forfeit to sensational Queen Sherry. Dusty Rhodes, I saw you and Sapphire arrive here today at the Philadelphia Spectrum. Perhaps you can shed some light on Sapphire's current whereabouts.
I'll tell you, Mean Gene, I don't know. I wish I knew where she was. 10 minutes after we got to the building, she disappeared. And I went looking for her. I searched the building high and low. I looked in every nook and cranny. Asked every security guard. I said, hey, have you seen Sweet Sapphire? It's almost as she disappeared into thin air. I don't mind telling you, Mean Gene, and everyone who's listening, I'm worried. I'm worried big time. Because she's never done anything like this before. Hey, Hacksaw, have you seen Sapphire, baby?
No, I haven't, Dust, but we're all still looking for her.
Well, what about these gifts she's been receiving, Dusty? I know you've been concerned about the anonymous and certainly the lavish nature of them.
You bet I'm concerned, Gene, because nobody gets something for nothing. But that's not my business. It's Sweet Sapphire's business. And besides, she's been the happiest she's ever been. She got a diamond ring. She got a full leaf mink coat. She got a diamond and sapphire necklace. She got a cruise around the world. She got a gold bracelet. And she got a brand new Cadillac. But baby, where is she? I'm sorry, Gene. I got to go and find Sapphire.
All right, as the search for Sapphire continues, I'm reminded that she did say she'd be receiving the biggest gift of all here at SummerSlam. Unfortunately, however, it looks as if she may not be here to receive it.
I'll tell you what,
Now-
me and Gene, still looking for Sweet Sapphire, baby. I gotta get Jim Duggan on the case. He's a special private detective, baby. He's gonna go all over the background looking for her.
Yeah, it's one thing to lose like your wallet or your keys, but even if you've lost something that's very hard to miss, like Sapphire, the last person I would ask at all to help look for them is that pudding head, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Dust.
No, I haven't, Dust, but we're all still looking for her.
Yeah, who? You and the 2x4? Moron.
They're all
Come on,
still looking
Dust.
for her. The search party's underway. These guys who need to train for these matches, they've been yanked from their training routine because they're all looking for Sapphire. They're scouring the spectrum for Sapphire. They don't know where she is.
Jim Powers and Buddy Rose? Is that what-
Jim Duggan's on the prowl.
Yeah, lovely. Good luck. No wonder he never found her. So I was waiting for that.
Sapphire, baby.
No, I haven't, Dust, but we're all still looking for her.
Yeah, you and who? You and the 2x4. Yeah, whatever.
That was one of my favorite interviews of all time.
Yeah, because it made no sense, as usual, anything involving him. So, Sherry wins, and Sweet Sapphire's missing, which is, that's practically impossible, because as Jesse said, it's hard to miss someone who's 350 pounds. But anyway, let's move on to our next match, where while Duggan's, looking around the broom closet for Sapphire.
We're all still looking for her.
Yeah, great. Yeah, you and Buddy Rose. Tito Santana, who, as Justin just mentioned, wrestled a superbly awesome match on Saturday night's main event with Mr. Perfect about a month before. At WrestleMania, he took on one half of the former Powers of Pain. On this night, he takes on the other half of the former Powers of Pain, as our man Davey Boy Smith called him, the Mighty Warlord. And the Warlord with his guy Slick, right? He had Slick right now, didn't he? Yes, he did.
Yes.
With Tito Santana.
And his new look.
Yes, he Gone was his Hawk wannabe look, and In is the Phantom of the Opera with the little scepter thing with the W on the top of it.
Badass.
Now, yes, it was. Matter of fact, very much so. Now, this was originally supposed to be the big blow-off between Tito and his former Strikeforce running buddy, the model Ricky Martel, but Martel was pulled, and the storyline reason was a photo shoot in France.
And it was actually I think it was the week before. I'm pretty sure it was the week before the show that they made that announcement.
I don't understand. Why did they just have this match? We've been waiting for it. Ready Built feud was over a year and a half in the making.
It is weird. Yeah, it was on the 825. They said be attending a modeling contest in Paris. I think it was actually his.
So it was that Superstars 2 days before.
No, but someone was. This says he was injured. I thought something happened with a close family member or someone was sick and he had to leave.
Interesting.
But maybe that was a different time.
But that sucks because that was a perfect opportunity to finally blow that feud off, and did not happen. But Tito probably would have jobbed anyway, either way. But here he got to try and make a big guy look good. And actually, this match really isn't that bad. I like the match at WrestleMania with the Barbarian better.
Yes.
Just because Barbarian's a little more nimble than the Warlord is. But Warlord looked good. You know, he put over Tito's moves, and he looked like a monster in the process. I actually became a pretty big Warlord mark at this point, when he debuted as a solo guy, because I really thought that Warlord could have been a great challenger for the world title. Him and I think Ultimate Warrior could have had some decent matches. House show feuds. There are a lot of good heels on this roster that I think, we'll get to that story a little bit later on, but Warlord was a guy that I actually latched onto fairly quickly as a good heel with Slick. So, but this match, nothing crazy.
No, yeah, Tito puts him over like he knows how. 5 minutes. He has to act. The power slam at the end is actually kind of good.
Yes, he puts it over pretty nice.
But yeah, usual Tito work.
Yeah. So Tito wins, I should say loses, but looks good in the process as he always does, and the Warlord gets his first big heel solo victory. All right, next up, as my PIC will intro, the second big title match of the evening.
Yes, and that is for the tag team titles. But we have a lot of changes have gone on since our last tag team championship match on pay-per-view, and that was at WrestleMania. Of course, where Demolition defeated the Colostomy Connection to win the tag team titles. But here they are facing the Rejuvenated Hot Foundation. A year earlier, Jesse Ventura proclamated that it would be a year before the Hot Foundation saw the tag titles again after losing to the Brainbusters. So he was very prescient with that. Of course, Demolition underwent some changes over the summer. Bill Eadie, who portrayed Axe, was having some heart trouble, so Vince did not want to take a chance having him running out there, working all these matches on the house show circuit and on television with a chance to him having any kind of major issues. So they went ahead and added a third member to the team, and that is, of course, Crush, portrayed by Brian Adams, a young wrestler out of Portland. They brought him in, and on the 6-5 TV taping was when Crush made his debut, but it was a 7-8 challenge where they had the first interview. Throughout this time, they were actually still faces. They hadn't really officially turned heel yet. But it would come as soon as they, they started acting a little more heelish. And then when they added Crush to the mix, things, they started doing the whole, 3-man team tricks.
Yeah, dipsy-do switcheroo.
Yeah, that's when they really started to mix things up. So then on the, let me just pick it up here. I had it 1 second ago. Where the Hartford Nation officially made the challenge. Sorry, I lost it here. I think it was in... here it is, July 14th. The Hart Foundation officially challenged Demolition to this tag title match. So this is where... I think early on there was still kind of like a little bit of a face-face thing. But then, Demolition slowly obviously started to turn heel over the summer. They announced the next week that it would be a 2 out of 3 falls contest. So a lot of build-up to this one. But also during this time, we had a debut of a very, very big tag team. And I'll let you go ahead and talk about them, since these are your boys.
Well, after talking about them in other podcasts here on the Place to Be, and we mentioned them on our Listomania last week, and Justin and I have had some debates about this team here on the Place to Be podcast and on our message board, bigelow34.proboards.com. After being successful in both the AWA and in the National Wrestling Alliance, Mid-Atlantic, JCP, in my personal opinion, the greatest tag team of all time finally gets to New York. And that team is, of course, Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors. And they debuted, let's see. the 7:15 Wrestling Challenge. Believe it or not, ironically, Demolition Smash, of course, Barry Darso, used to work out in the same gym as Hawk and Animal when they were all nobodies in Minnesota. Ironic. Now, of course, the Road Warriors, when they first started, just two big, no-nonsense dudes, Michael Hegstrand, a.k.a. Hawk, and Joe Laurinaitis, a.k.a. Animal, both from the Chicago suburbs, but they did train in Minneapolis. They started in Georgia and just were absolute monsters. Came in with the spikes, and they just destroyed guys. In fact, on their very good and definitely purchasable Road Warriors DVD that came out a few years ago, there's two Georgia squashes that are just absolutely awe-inspiring. One of them actually is a very young Arn Anderson. I think it was 1983. And the Road Warriors don't even let their entrance music finish. They roll in the ring and just absolutely annihilate these two ham and eggers. It's got to be like 25 seconds. Just tremendous building of these two guys. They would move on to Minnesota into the AWA, and they would win the AWA tag team titles in 1984. They defeated, I believe it was the Crusher and the Bruiser for the titles. 4 years later, they would hit the second wing of the trifecta when they defeated the Midnight Express in 1988 to become the NWA Tag Team Champions. They were the only four-time Pro Wrestling Illustrated Tag Team of the Year, 1983, 84, 85, and 88. And now attempting to complete the trifecta and to become eventually try to become the first team ever to become AWA, NWA, and WWF Tag Team Champions. They make their debut again on the 7:15 Wrestling Challenge.
And it was actually a couple weeks later on the 7:28 Superstars. They were the guests of Brother Love, and Brother Love actually called them Demolition Imposters. But LOD came back and said, no, Demolitions are imposters. So that was kind of, teasing what may be happening. And the LOD were kind of always in the periphery of this feud. On the, I believe it was either Saturday Night's Main Event or the SummerSlam Spectacular. I'm pretty sure it's Saturday Night's Main Event. The Rockers and the Hot Foundation tussled for the tag team titles. And, I'm sorry. It was Rockers and Demolition tussled for the tag team titles. And Rockers actually had them beat, but Demolition did a little switcheroo and ended up beating the Rockers. And the Hot Foundation and the LOD all came out, and all the teams were arguing, and Jesse was making fun of the Hot Foundation, saying are they afraid to face Demolition? Why would they want the Rockers to win when they have a title shot? So it was always kind of a memorable match and a memorable angle there to add heat to this. So the match itself, I actually really like it. This was where the famous interview, I think, where they reference like Phil Collins and Two Hearts beating his one or whatever before the match. I think it was in the Wrestling with Shadows. Or maybe Beyond the Mat. It was in some documentary or movie. I just remember that famous line that Anvil says.
Right.
Where they talk about, or Brett says it, where they talk about that. So, of course, this is best out of three. The first fall comes at 6:20, where they hit Bret Hart with the decapitation device. Smash pins him off of that, so the champs go up 1-0. The second fall is at 10:35, and of course, we should preface that it's Smash and Crush, were the two men wrestling this match. Axe was nowhere to be found, of course, right away anyway.
In the beginning, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
At the 10:35 mark, Demolition gets disqualified. Crush grabs the referee, picks him up and throws him. And they kind of make it like he was just being a dumb rookie at that point, getting them disqualified. So things were tied up at 1. And it was at this point that Demolition started the real trickery. Axe comes down, slides under the ring, and they keep doing the trick, switch with him and Smash or him and Crush, I forget which one, kept going in and out. And it was kind of goofy that the ref couldn't tell. Vince tried to play it off like they all looked alike, but they obviously didn't.
No,
Crush was much taller and Axe had the short hair, so it was kind of hokey that the ref couldn't tell, but whatever. You let it go, stuff like that. Of course, the Legion of Doom backstage had enough of that nonsense. They come out. One of them pulls Axe out from under the ring, and it's kind of a funny moment. Axe is almost clawing and screaming at him. And the other one, I think Animal runs over and pushes Crush off the rope. And then he's arguing with him, and Bret Hart rolls him up. And the Hart Foundation are the new tag team champions, the first time since 1987 they regained their gold. This is kind of a sad end for Demolition. They will stick around for a little while, but really this is their swan song as far as the team we've known and loved. WrestleMania was their final peak. This is kind of it for them. Axe stays around through the end of the year, but this is it. From here on out, they're not really viewed as much of contenders for the tag title. So the Hart Foundation on top. I really like this match. I think it's one of the better. It's probably the best match of the show, actually. I gave it a 3.5 in our review. There's a lot of fun, a lot of chaos. Vince and Piper are great at the end when LOD comes out. A lot of madness going on, trying to figure out what was up, what was what. So, much love to this match.
I absolutely do as well. My favorite match of the night. Obviously, because I got to see my favorite tag team of all time finally in my favorite federation of all time, and it was just so cool. And my friend. As everyone knows here on the Place to Be podcast, SummerSlam was the pay-per-view I used to host as a kid, so all my friends were over that night. And my friend Pat was a huge Hart Foundation mark, as well as the Road Warriors, but he liked Bret, actually. And he was pumped to see the Hart Foundation win the tag straps again. So, and I was pumped just because Hawk and Animal were in my federation. It was almost like, when you're a kid, you're almost like in a weird way, you feel like you're Vince, or you're the promoter of the WWF, because as your favorite promotion or your favorite federation to watch as a kid, watching your favorite guys in other promotions, you almost feel like you're not part of them. And as much as I was a huge Road Warrior fan from the very beginning, seeing them in the AWA and then obviously seeing them in Mid-Atlantic, it was like, it's almost like looking at a beautiful girl from afar. You're like, I wish she was with me. I'm happy for them, but I wish they were happy with me. And then finally, they're in your Fed. And now, I was just ecstatic. And I know they were only there making a run in, but it served Demolition right for the trickery and the well-deserved Hart Foundation, who've gone through 2 years of kind of spinning their wheels, comes away with the big win and is the new tag team champions.
All right. Well, before we creep anyone else out besides me with your stalker-like analogies, let's wrap this up. You're going to be singing LL Cool J's, what is it, Hey Lover, the one where he's basically like stalking the fucking girl. I mean,
or Every Breath You Take by the Police. Yes, I know.
It's a little scary.
You know what? It's unfortunate. As much as I said it coming out, I'm like, wait, that didn't quite sound right. But in the end, you get the girl. That's the whole point of it. It's kind of like a MTV video of the 80s. But anyway, all right, go ahead.
Well, the next match is yours. I was just freaked out. I didn't want you to keep going down that path.
I apologize, fans. My point is you see your favorite, as a kid, my favorite federation was obviously WWF, but my favorite tag team was the Road Warriors, and just seeing them in another Fed just didn't feel right until they came to New York, using the industry term. And then you're like, my favorite team is in my federation. So it was a special night for me as a Road Warriors fan to see them, on a WWF pay-per-view. So it was pretty cool. So I'll leave it at that. And I apologize for creeping anyone out. I was trying to come up with maybe I should have used the sports analogy for these listeners.
I think anything else would have worked.
Yeah, it probably would have worked. Can we edit that out? We'll have to ask Derek. We'll have to edit out, and I'll have to put an extra in on the on the second podcast. Anyway, Hart Foundation, new tag team champions, and my favorite team is in. All right, enough of that. Our next match, as we see a debut earlier in the show, we now have an exit from this show. Jake the Snake Roberts, coming off a lackluster performance at WrestleMania against Ted DiBiase, takes on Bad News Brown. And just on paper, once again, you would think this actually might be a really good match. You got two crazy guys in the ring, smacking each other around. This could be fun. It wasn't. First off, this is Bad News Brown's final pay-per-view match. Actually, final match altogether. I don't think you ever see him on camera. Of course, as we always use our wonderful reference, the history of WWE.com, our good friend Graham Coffin. I'm sure he was on the house show circuit, right, throughout 1990, even after this show? Because he's not on camera, I don't think, after this.
Bad News?
Yeah.
I think... I don't know, I could check. Hang on. Go ahead, you can talk about
okay, well, while Justin's looking that up, his final pay-per-view record was 2-5-2. 2 wins, 5 losses, and 2 no decisions. He was 0-2 at the Rumble. 1-0-2 at WrestleMania. 2 no decisions. And his one win was a Battle Royal. 1-1 at SummerSlam and 0-2 at Survivor Series. So his final pay-per-view record, 9 matches total. His final record is 2-5-2. Now, the build to this was just like the Piper and Bad News build to WrestleMania. Incredibly bizarre. The two men battled each other on house shows from May right up until this show. Bad News claimed he wasn't afraid of snakes and that he would produce his very own Harlem sewer rats to combat and probably eat Damien. To ensure that these two men would not get out of control and the match would not get too crazy, Jack Tunney named the freshly minted babyface and incredibly over Big Boss Man to be the special guest referee.
Yes.
Sadly, no sewer rats. And sadly, the match was not good. Unfortunate. This feud, again, just the work rate was sloppy. Nobody really got a foothold. The battling back and forth just wasn't there. As usual, a DQ. Piper was. This is where we saw the deficiencies of Hot Rod as a commentator. He struggled throughout the show, and rightfully so. The guy really doesn't have any official commentating experience, and Vince kind of threw him into a. Yeah, Superstars is one thing. You can kind of futz off on TV tapings, but this is a little different. This is a little different. You know, this is a big pay-per-view. People are paying to watch these matches, and the commentary just was substandard. Piper was trying to play the heel and try and defend Bad News, which made no sense since he was feuding with the guy 5 months earlier. And it just didn't work. And unfortunately, Bad News Brown will go off into the sunset with unrealized potential and uninteresting pay-per-view matches. So Jake Roberts wins by disqualification, and that was that.
I actually went to a house show during the summer here where they had a lot of these kind of set up, for this show. And actually, it was Bad News and Jake fought, and he had the cage with the alleged sewer rats in it at that show. So I always thought that was funny. But we never actually see them on TV. So I mean, it was kind of gave something for Jake to do. His next feud would be much, much better than this one, obviously. But that's that. So this is kind of almost the halfway point of the show. And up next we have a special, which seems to be kind of a running thing at these SummerSlams, a special Brother Love show. And here he has a big returning superstar as his guest. Do you want to tell us who that superstar is?
I shall. The returning superstar is, we haven't seen him in the WWF since, probably mid to late 1984, when he was a G.I. Joe toting good guy in a great vicious blood feud with the Iron Sheik. But a very different character emerged from his return. And 6 years later, Sergeant Slaughter made his return to the World Wrestling did indeed make his return to the World Wrestling Federation. And unfortunately, he was not the happy-go-lucky G.I. Joe babyface that we were used to. He actually was sympathizing with Iraq. Now, to kind of spread out the world in general in 1990, on August 2nd, the country of Iraq and dictator Saddam Hussein invaded the tiny little country that no one had ever heard of Kuwait. Just, again, about a month earlier in the month, August 2nd. And kind of riding the crest of that, because we know how good Vince was at, rolling with the changes. Sergeant Slaughter returned, but instead of kind of bringing him back as the old G.I. Joe loving happy babyface, Slaughter came back and actually admonished our U.S. military for being lazy and unmotivated, and became the sympathizer for that dastardly Rathscalian Saddam Hussein and Iraq.
Yes, and the first vignette of Slaughter's return was on the July 21st Superstars. And he said he was no longer proud of his country because they had welcomed, and we'll get to this in a moment, Nikolai Volkov with open arms and saying America was now soft. Slaughter vignettes would air over the next couple of weeks, and he'd have promos, and he'd make his first Superstars appearance actually after the show. So he never even wrestled until after SummerSlam. But prior to it, he did have those promos each and every week. And here he goes on and rants about kind of the same stuff about how his country has become soft. And, you know, I don't know if he actually got too much into the Iraq stuff yet. I think he was a little bit. But I'm pretty sure it was more just anti-U.S. saying they were soft and railing against all the stuff with Nikolai Volkov receiving, because he had actually received the Medal of Honor. We'll get to that in a minute. But so that was really, seemed like they were more setting up a feud between him and Volkov more than really getting into the whole Gulf War shit. I don't think they really kicked that into gear until after the show when the war really started to escalate a little bit. And,
right.
and Vince kind of saw where he could go with it. And then, of course... you know, obviously he would elevate, I think, much higher than even Vince imagined he was going to upon his return. So here he just, you know, rags on the U.S., rags on Nikolai Volkov, and that's pretty much it. So I am going to go ahead, though, and let you talk about our next match, because I'm sure this is definitely going to be one of your favorites of all time.
Oh, jeez. Well, because of the changing of Nikolai Volkov. Now, just as a backstory, by WrestleMania, and obviously their 50-something second destruction at the hands of the Hart Foundation, the Bolsheviks were essentially useless. So, the Bolsheviks were broken up. Boris Zhukov became nothing more than a afterthought jobber. And Nikolai Volkov suddenly became a pro-U.S. sympathizer. Now, also... the other reason to do this is by 1990, communism was essentially dead, thanks to the what happened in the late 80s involving the U.S. and Russia.
Actually, I think it was due to Steve Allen thinking about Perestroika and Glasnost.
And How Is Your Sister Tonight? Steve Allen caused the end of communism, and I thank him for that. He also caused, then he turned on us and the World Television Council attacked the Attitude. No, never mind. Anyway, because of obviously the thawing of the Cold War in the late 80s, and Russia no longer being, in essence, a communist country at this point, having evil Russian bad guys really was pretty stupid. So they decided to turn Nikolai Volkov face.
Right, and that happened on the May 19th Superstars after a loss to the Rockers. They argued and split up, and then they had their quick blow-off match on the 6-2 Superstars. Nikolai defeated Boris by DQ when Boris hit Nikolai with his boot. Before the match, Boris sang the Russian national anthem, and Nikolai sang the American national anthem. And then in a funny segment that I've probably seen, but I don't remember it, Boris was actually a guest of Brother Love the next week, so I'm sure that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Seeing him on that show. July 7th, Nikolai was also a guest of Brother Love, and that is when your boy came out, presented Volkov with the U.S. flag, and welcomed him to the United States. And they'd later do vignettes where the Boy Scouts awarded Nikolai with a Medal of Honor for his newfound love of the United States. And his contributions to world peace, strength, and unity. And they all sang they all recited the Pledge of Allegiance with the crowd. So that kind of is what brought us to here.
And I wish Nikolai Volkov had been told, if you thought your career was pretty bad after you broke up with the Bolsheviks, imagine now with your new tag team partner, how wonderful your career is going to blossom, because at least you can now win matches, because God forbid your partner ever loses any. And guess what? He didn't hear either, as they defeat a freshly minted...
I got my 2x4. I got the American flag.
We're all still looking for it, Dust.
I got my 2x4. I got the American
Dust, we're all still looking for her. We're still looking for Sapphire.
A lot of times when you're getting ready to wrestle, you're in the back of the dress.
God, do I feel bad for Pat Tanaka that night having to look at the run sheet. God, damn shame. Orient Express, who were just coming off a very hot win over the Rockers at WrestleMania, walked into the back room at the Spectrum that afternoon and immediately saw their career just be flushed totally down the toilet, at least for the time being, when they took on Nikolai Volkov and the snot-blowing buffoon. Of course, the match is absolutely hideous. And cheat. In any event, the Orient Express lose this match in a mere 3.5 minutes when Duggan gets the pin. Don't even give Nikolai the pin, for God's sakes. Duggan's even got to take the pin away from him. Who had the better record during the Federation era, him or freaking Hogan?
He's definitely up there.
He's got to be up there. Good God. I don't think he's ever lost a match at this point. He's been there 4 years. And Volkov, it sucks because after WrestleMania, when Duggan got destroyed by Earthquake, I thought I'd never have to see him again. But alas, nothing ever goes my way. So Duggan and Volkov get the win. At least Nikolai won the match, so at least I got something out of it I sort of enjoyed. And the Orient Express, after a big, happy, and motivating win at WrestleMania, got steamrolled by the snot-blowing Express, known as Hacksaw Jim Duggan. But at least Nikolai got the win, even though he didn't get the pin. Because God forbid.
No, I haven't, Dust, but we're all still looking for her.
Yeah, why don't you look for him out in the highway? Why don't you go play in traffic, okay? Anyway.
Hey, we did get a stirring rendition of God Bless America, and that's really what matters.
Well.
As Duggan and Nikolai serenade us all.
Oh, I thought you had it.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you killed yourself.
No, I thought you had the song.
No, I'm not going to. I like torturing you, but I'm not going to torture both of us.
Oh, well. And Nikolai actually had a little American.
Baby. No, I haven't, Dust, but we're all still looking for her.
Yeah, we're all still looking for poor Nikolai Volkov's career after that match, too. Nikolai actually had a little U.S. flag on his tights, too. So, anyway, let's just move on before I have to keep listening to this. Duggan and Volkov win. Volkov doesn't get the pin, God forbid, and the Orient Express have to lay down for no reason whatsoever. All right. And glory. Any event, why don't you go on to the next match and stop playing that nonsense?
All right, we're continuing our story from earlier, of course.
Yeah,
with,
God, can we end that too?
With Sapphire and Sherry. And, of course, we are now time for Dusty Rhodes and Macho Man. Right before the match, though, frantic Gene and Dusty Rhodes banging on a door, which they have revealed that Sapphire is in, but she will not come out. She won't come out of the room. Dusty's upset. He's looking very nervous as he comes down to the ring to face his arch rival, Randy Savage. Prior to the match, before things can begin, we hear the beautiful laugh of Ted DiBiase, and he appears up on the podium with Sapphire in her mink coat and Virgil. Ted DiBiase tells Dusty that he has been the mysterious benefactor, and that Sapphire is no longer into the big fat man with the polka dots. She is now digging the rich boy from the many, many different homes throughout America. So these two men fighting over an elderly black woman. Not sure how I feel about that, but still, DiBiase, I do like how much of just a evil, conniving heel prick he was. That he wanted to like bust on Dusty this badly that he steals his old black manager just because he can. So I kind of dug that. Just a nice little villain move there. So Dusty obviously is very distracted. He tries to go out after her, but Savage attacks him and just quickly dispatches him, hits him with a loaded purse, and knocks him out and hits the elbow, and that's that. So, Dusty, he had a really good first year in the promotion from SummerSlam 89 to here. From here on out, he is just a joke, and they really humiliate him on the way out.
Yeah.
Here he looks awful, really concerned over Sapphire, and then Savage just easily disposes him. Of course, the highlight comes after the match when Dusty goes charging backstage, and DiBiase and Sapphire dive into a limo, and Dusty just catches up as it's pulling away, and he bangs on it, and then he's like standing there crying into the Philadelphia night as the limo drives off. So it really made him look kind of stupid. Now Sapphire would actually stick around to like November managing DiBiase with Virgil. She would come out, and she had the DiBiase wrestling buddy and the mink coat on. So, it's kind of hokey that DiBiase cared enough to keep her around, but this feud will continue to our next show. The DiBiase Dusty one, that is. But as far as the Savage Dusty feud, that one is finally over now. And Savage kind of goes into a state of flux. They would have one final blow-off, though. We'll get to that at our next show.
But at least here, Savage finally seems like he's back on the right path.
Yes.
From kind of being, looking like a buffoon for the first 7 months of the year. At least now it seems like the tide has turned, and and Savage seems to be, getting back on track. But the shot of Dusty running up the driveway ramp out of the Spectrum while the limo's pulling off is pretty hilarious. And no, that match is not on. So far, folks, just to let you fans know, none of these matches have been on any DVDs yet. On any separate DVDs other than the actual pay-per-view DVD, which is on in the Cooler anthology set that came out a couple years ago. So Dusty kind of looks like a fool, and Savage just picked the bones and is now kind of back on track, hopefully. Now, we get to the first of our double main event. And this, my friends, this is the match. This is the match that officially sucked in the little 10-year-old boy from West Warwick, Rhode Island, into the world of wrestling podcasts and everything else that he is right now.
Okay, I'm going to do the fun fact of this match.
It is this. Please, you need this. You need this. This is very cathartic for you.
All right.
Go right ahead.
On May 26th, Superstars, I was sitting about 12 houses down from where I am right now, my grandmother's house, where we're staying throughout this summer as we're refinishing my parents' house. They were adding the second floor addition. So we were living in the basement at my grandparents' house, right down the street from where I live now, watching this episode of Superstars. Hulk Hogan was a guest on the Brother Love show. During the interview, he was confronted by the new monster heel on the block, Earthquake. After brief altercation, Quake attacked Hogan and put him down with numerous earthquake splashes. For a long time, and possibly ever, Hulk Hogan now looked mortal. Reports came in week after week that he may have to retire. He was wheeled off on a stretcher. He had a broken sternum. He was out. They made one of the most heart-wrenching video packages of all time. And I don't know if there's any audio to this thing, but I'm going to play it. I think it's just music. But when you hear the dramatic transition in themes, you'll know why this young 9-year-old boy from West Warwick, Rhode Island was brought to tears.
Video tribute.
Now, for those of you who haven't seen this video, and it goes on for another couple of minutes, basically it's the real American theme with Hogan, showing him in all his great moments, doing his thing, and then when that dramatic music hits, it's this low-angle shots of Earthquake squashing him. Mm-hmm. And that shit was pretty traumatic to me. I would just really become a diehard fan, like about 2 months before this. And, as always, you latch on to the main guy, and that was Hulk Hogan. And to see him laid out like this by Earthquake was pretty traumatic. So after a couple months where they were teasing that, he may be done, they went ahead and finally announced that it was imminent that Hulk Hogan would be returning. His career saved, not over. What they had us, all us young fans do was write in to save Hulk Hogan, or to help him recover anyway. It was a Get Well Hulk campaign. And his buddy Tugboat, the new man on the block, played by Fred Ottman, of course dressed up with the now infamous red and white striped tank top, little white hat, and his great Tugboat music, was brought in as a known friend to Hulk Hogan. So he began campaigning on Hogan's behalf, selling the Hulk Hogan friendship bracelets, giving us weekly updates, and telling us his buddy was going to be okay. Tugboat then revealed that he would be in Hulk Hogan's corner in his return match when he was set to get revenge on Earthquake at SummerSlam. Unfortunately, Earthquake had other plans in mind, and of course his running buddy, Dino Bravo, that was set to be in his corner. They both attacked Tugboat 45 seconds into a match between Bravo and Tugboat on the 818 Superstars, with Hogan obviously still not around to help save his buddy. Quake crushed him with 2 splashes, putting him on the shelf. So now Tugboat was out, and we had no idea if anyone would have Hulk Hogan's back at SummerSlam. But thankfully, that night on 8/18, one man had come out to save Tugboat from further damage, and that was the Big Boss Man, who now stood, of course, for law, order, and justice. The next week, Hulk Hogan made his return to Superstars on the Brother Love Show and announced that Big Boss Man would return and get his back in his corner at SummerSlam. So that sets the stage. Hogan, Quake, Bravo, Boss Man in the corners. Obviously Hogan Warrior was the biggest match that year that I saw. Mm-hmm. To me, though, this was the match with the build. Now, I didn't see this show live. I saw it shortly after, but the build to this match to me was where it was at. I was really, really looking forward to this Hogan Earthquake match. I wanted to see Hogan get his revenge, obviously. I like the whole thing with Boss Man being in his corner. And whereas Boss Man doesn't have a match on the show because his feud with DiBiase kind of blown off throughout the summer, he's put in 2 pretty high-profile spots and really made out to be like a real paragon of virtue as a face. And this sets up a little relationship with him and Hogan that would run, into 1991 and really kind of solidified his standing as a main event player. So
right.
The match itself, I really, really liked. For what it is, for the 2 guys that it is, I think it's really good. I mean, you can't expect much. Hogan had been on the shelf, for as long as he had. And, of course, Earthquake, you didn't know what he could give in the ring. But they really worked a pretty smart match. Hogan goes for a body slam a couple times. Quake falls on him. Hogan's selling, obviously, was his strong point. And Quake did a good job with the offense. He had enough antics on the floor with Jimmy Hart, Bravo, and Boss Man. And, of course, they didn't have Hogan actually win because they wanted to keep this feud simmering on the house show circuit because they really hadn't had it, used it on the house shows at all because Hogan was obviously on the shelf.
Right.
So they wanted to carry it on into the fall. So Hogan wins by countout. He actually slams Earthquake on a table at ringside, which is pretty cool. And then after the match, Quake attacks and Hogan and Boss Man just take turns basically bashing him in the back with this like footstool type chair. And in the post-match interview, we'd see Quake have these huge red welts on his back that were really nasty looking. And of course, just as an aside, Hogan needed the time off that summer to film Suburban Commando. Of course, one of the great movies of our generation that you and I will be doing a podcast on at some point.
Yes, we will.
So that's where he was at this time, away from the ring. So this match, I like it. I like the whole story, how he kept trying to slam Quake and he couldn't do it. And Piper was actually getting into him on the commentary saying, "Stop trying. It's stupid. Stupid for you to even try." And then Hogan finally does slam him to a good pop, and then, like I said, it slams him onto the table too. So, good match actually. One of my little hidden gems of 1990.
Yeah, and we still try to figure out, of course, and no, I don't know if this is kind of half funny, half bizarre, but Tugboat, aka Fred Ottman, is actually Dusty's brother-in-law.
Yes,
because he does call him Uncle Fred. And, of course, we still wonder if Dusty was actually supposed to be in this spot, but Tugboat slid in and took... Oh, sorry, wrong show. Sorry. Anyway, wrong conspiracy. But I wonder what those Christmas dinners are like. Wink, wink. Anyway, I think Boss Man... Nothing against Tugboat, but Boss Man in this match actually juices the match up. So, I think it was better off anyway.
I agree.
Yeah, Boss Man was the corner guy here. It just worked out better. I actually love this match too. This match is actually on. It is it's on the extra disc on if you have. A while back, I talked about the Hulk Hogan DVD, the Ultimate Anthology, and I said there were 3 copies. I was incorrect. I want to do who's the guy on what's his name that does the corrections on PTI?
Statboy?
Yeah, Statboy. Oh yes, of course, our man Statboy. I'm doing a Statboy right here. I had said that there were 3 copies of the Hulk Hogan The Ultimate Anthology DVD. There was one you could have got on Shop Zone, which was just the 3 discs. Then you bought it at Best Buy, which was the 4th disc of matches, and then there was the version at Walmart, which was the 4th disc of Hogan-O's best episodes. I was wrong. Those are reversed. The Best Buy copy was the one that had the Hogan-O's best episodes. The Walmart copy had the 4th disc of extra matches. And one of those extra matches on that 4th disc is this match. So if you have the copy, I think now if you go on shop.com, I think you can get the 4th copy with the Walmart disc. The crowd is hot, and you're right. The whole, from top to bottom, just the whole package is very fun, very entertaining. I was pumped, actually, to see Hogan get his back to Earthquake. And I liked Earthquake as a character. I don't think Dino Bravo would have it this good again in terms of how far up the card he was.
No, definitely not.
So I'm sure he was enjoying this moment. And overall, it was a good match. In terms of entertainment value, the crowd was crazy. No, Hogan didn't win it clean. He won by count out, but that's fine. They wanted to milk this for a couple more months. And they actually would have some very good house show matches. There's one, I think it's on one of our MSG house shows that was on 24/7 or Classics On Demand. Might have been late September, early October. That was actually very good. Much better than this match. But this match is good from an entertainment value. Mm-hmm. And obviously the more memorable moment, as you mentioned, Boss Man with those nasty step stool shots on Earthquake's back and these nasty red stinging welts. I'm sure that shower wasn't comfortable after the match. The hot water hitting those. They were pretty nasty. Actually, it worked out for effect. And it looked good. So Hogan gets the big win. It is by count out, but he does win. Earthquake still has his heat. And everybody looks good in the end. So that was a good first half of the double main event at this show. Did you feel satisfied even with Hogan winning by count out at that time?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And Hogan moves on. Earthquake moves on. It was kind of weird, honestly. This is the first, as we get to our final match, our actual main event of this show. It is funny to actually see a show where Hogan is not in the main event and not even involved. Obviously, he wasn't in the main event of WrestleMania 4, but he was obviously there and involved. But our last match of the night, our actual main event, Hogan had nothing to do with. And this was the first pay-per-view in WWF history in which Hulk Hogan was not involved in the main event whatsoever. He wasn't in it. He also was not involved in it. Didn't run out, wasn't outside ringside, just wasn't there. So this is a big moment for Vince. Because he did not have his moneymaker in the main event. And our main event was, of course, for the World Wrestling Federation Championship, your champion, the Ultimate Warrior, who, of course, won the title from Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania, defends against his old nemesis from 1989, the ravishing one, Rick Rude. Now, this might be one of our somewhat ranting moments for Justin and I, because obviously after WrestleMania, Perfect was the Intercontinental Champion, and after that, there was a dearth of heels on the roster. There wasn't really anybody that could really challenge War. Because you had face versus face, you really couldn't have any type of rematch at SummerSlam, as Hogan was involved, of course, with Earthquake, and I don't think you wanted to do that match again that quickly. I think the crowd would have been flat. So, we needed a challenger for the Ultimate Warrior. Well, Vince decides, well, it worked in 1989. Let's try it again. So, after beating Jimmy Snuka at WrestleMania, Rick Rude kind of left for a while, got off camera, came back. No, I think he still had his mustache. Yeah, he did still have his mustache. Yep. But cut off his recognizable flowing black mullet and now had short hair. And there were vignettes of him working out and running on the beach and lifting and making threats to the Ultimate Warrior. I still want you. I still want you in that ring, and now I'm going to take your World Wrestling Federation Championship. Obviously, the new look, the new attitude was meant to make Rude into a quick, credible world title threat. On the 7/28 Saturday Night's main event, which is actually one of the more informative, a lot of stuff went on in this particular show.
Yes.
Rude and Warrior faced off for the world title in a match, but the match ended in a DQ after Bobby Heenan interfered in the match. That same night, a rematch was announced for SummerSlam, but this time, so no chicanery or tomfoolery went down. We would have the match inside the confines of a steel cage. It would be the first steel cage match on pay-per-view since WrestleMania 2, when Hulk Hogan defended the title against King Kong Bundy. Isn't that amazing? 4 years since our last cage match on pay-per-view.
Long time.
Long time. Very long time to use it. But, of course, back in those days, Vince was very judicious when it came to gimmick matches, stipulations. He didn't throw them out as freely as he did by the mid-90s and, of course, into the Attitude Era. Now, I can't remember the last time that a guy's last match in a promotion was actually a world title match. But this is indeed the final WWF pay-per-view match for Rick Rude. After 11 matches, his final record, 6-4-1. Actually pretty good. He was 0-2 at the Rumble, 2-0-1 at WrestleMania. So he was actually finished undefeated at WrestleMania. 1-2 at SummerSlam, and 3-0 at Survivor Series. So he was in 3 Survivor Series matches, and his team won them all. Again, that doesn't mean he was a survivor. It was just his team won them all. I actually like this match. Obviously, a year after their awesome Intercontinental title match at SummerSlam 89, this match does not live up to that, and it's kind of hard to. But I still enjoy this match very much. I think the two of them still have good chemistry. The cage, they did use it a lot. Rude seemed to have finally gotten into a groove where his offense flowed a little bit more. It wasn't as choppy as it was in 89. I don't know. As much as we talk a lot about the lack of heels and the fact that Warrior's reign seemed a little hollow at times, once again, he did step up and make this match look pretty good. And Rick Rude, I think, was a credible opponent. And I think that, at least for the time being, Warrior did still look like a strong champion.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely still looked strong. It's just the problem is he had already beat Rude so decisively the year before, at SummerSlam and everything, and then things just kind of ended. And then Rude didn't really do much besides, he had that little bit of feud with Piper. And, he didn't look strong. I mean, the way they just kind of shoved him back up the card after WrestleMania, they cut his hair, had him working out, and then all of a sudden he's back to being a number one contender for the world title without much of a reason. It just kind of smacked of being a desperate move. And, it's too bad that they didn't have these heels that they could have built up in late 89, early 90, like Perfect. They could have elevated him past IC level, or even DiBiase. Guys that they could have had ready, or even if they would have made Rude look a little stronger coming into the year. Instead, Warrior, after his big win, just kind of has tepid feuds. And, after this, we'll see he's in a 6-man feud basically throughout the fall without the title even on the line. So, they clearly didn't really plan ahead for what Warrior was going to do. I didn't know if they thought he could kind of do the Hogan formula and they could just throw heel after heel at him, but they didn't really have any built up yet. They had a lot of good mid-card heels, but no real top-level heels until obviously they rebuild one at the end of the year. But by that point, his title reign's on complete life support. So, yeah, the match itself is good, only because these two, have good chemistry and it's a cage match, so it was easy for them to do. Piper was pretty good here, but he's almost kind of straddling the heel line, which is kind of weird because of how much he had hated Rude the year before. He almost kind of backs him a lot in this show.
Well, that's why I said same thing earlier on in the Bad News and Jake match. He's trying to back Bad News. It just didn't work. It was just, I think he was trying too hard, trying to make it too clear cut between him and Vince, and it just wasn't working. It just wasn't working.
Yeah, so he ends up, kind of ragging on Warrior a lot and almost pulling for Rude. So it was kind of weird, the whole dynamic there. But Warrior gets the win, and that officially ends Rude's run. He would obviously have another feud over the next couple months, but this is it for his pay-per-view WWF career, like you said. So
yes.
So that's it. That brings it into the show.
Yeah, the crowd's very happy at the end. Warrior's still the champion. He gets his main event solo. He gets his own main event, and he delivered. At the time, I don't think anybody realized, that really there was nothing left. But still, for this moment anyway, he gets his moment by himself. So overall, maybe as a standalone, this match, this show probably wasn't that bad. But coming off of probably, well, as you and I stated the last time, one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time in WrestleMania 6, this show just came off kind of flat. The mid-card was kind of blah. I mean, it was good to see the Hart Foundation as champion again. It was good to see this upstart Texas Tornado beat Perfect. But overall, the mid-card looked like it was starting to get into a state of flux. And for the first time since the start of the pay-per-view era at WrestleMania 1, the product looks kind of flat.
Yep.
And and considering 1989, you and I were gushing over, love the tag team division, love the mid-card, and like the main events. Right now, other than Warrior and obviously the Hogan Earthquake thing, and the tag team division still is pretty good. Not as good as it was the year before, but still okay. It just seems very flat. And this show kind of shows it. Maybe Piper being there hurts it a little bit. Maybe Jesse could have, sizzled up this mid-card to a level that could have been maybe better. But obviously we can't shit on Piper that much because, what was the guy going to do? It was his first major pay-per-view as an announcer. Vince kind of threw him into the fire. He did the best he could. I kind of crap on him a little bit on our written column review, which you can see, of course, on our message board, bigelow34.proboards.com. But I kind of crap on Piper a little bit, but I'm starting to ease up a little bit. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, only because, you're told, all right, Hot Rod, you're doing the pay-per-view tonight. Huh? Because, come on, doing a challenge or a Superstars is not exactly a pay-per-view.
No, and he filled in admirably. He did what he could do, but he's just still kind of lost between that face-heel divide. And of course, he didn't deliver the many classic lines that Jesse had delivered over the past few
You
years.
surprised me a bit because Lou Albano is a big, fat, sloppy pig.
Although I'll tell you something, Piper probably could have delivered something like that just as good. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he probably could.
He craps on Albano a lot in those eras, but that's if Piper was a full-blown heel. Problem here is Piper wasn't. Now, if this was Piper...
he still just had to find his voice,
yeah.
that's all.
If this was Piper 1985, oh my God, it would have been awesome. But it wasn't.
Well,
Piper wasn't like that.
He settles in nicely over the next year.
Yes, he does.
And he does play it up being as more of a face. But, he gets much better, than what he did here. But, he was fine for his first time, obviously.
Exactly. You actually bumped the show a little bit better than me. I gave it a C+. You gave it a C+. I gave it a C. And I hate giving SummerSlams bad grades because it's my favorite pay-per-view brand. But this show just, other than Demolish, the tag title match, and obviously the big win for Tornado, the double main event's good. But the rest of the show just seemed really flat. Yeah. The Dusty stuff kind of deflated. Didn't come off as good as it probably was meant to. And of course, when you're having Hacksaw Jim Duggan help you look for something, credibility goes out the window regardless. But
I mean, I definitely graded the show, with a little bit of nostalgia mixed in. WrestleMania 6, like I said, is the first pay-per-view where I was, a fan of the promotion for. But this is really the first pay-per-view where I'd seen all the build-up and kind of known what was going on. Was into the storylines, into the angles. So in my mind, this is, I look at it with a different tint because this is the first show where I was really, really into. And Hart's Demolition, obviously was, like we said, the best match on the card. Those two teams worked hard. It was a great moment having the tag titles change. Hogan Earthquake was very good, better than it should have been, and the main event obviously was solid as well. So a couple of good title changes, though. Hot crowd, the Philly crowd is pretty good.
Yes.
A lot of good storyline development. It's a good pushing new teams. Slick was actually kind of the big winner on this night. Warlord and Power and Glory get big wins as far as managers go. A decent show, but like you said, we're kind of feeling a little blah going into the fall here with Warrior on top and Hogan kind of, puts it around the upper mid-card or Earthquake and,
right.
A couple new champions on deck. And I think the difference with 89, like you mentioned, how excited we were for 89, is just that a lot of those guys, kind of been filtered out that were, the Rougeaus, the Brain Busters, Powers of Pain, right. A lot of those teams, Akeem and the Bossman as a team, and that's where the tag division kind of took a hit. And then the singles division kind of took a hit with the lack of, heavy, with Savage kind of being demoted to the mid-card and Dusty kind of being forgotten now. A lot of those guys that had carried that mid card in '89 were either gone or kind of being, flipped around the card a little bit. So,
Right.
And of course Beefcake, that's another major hit that they took, him being out in July. So, I think the problem is some of the people they brought in just weren't connecting yet. You're going with a desperation Nikolai Volkov face turn, Orient Express haven't really picked up the slack, of the teams that they replaced. And of course, they had other guys kind of debuting on Superstars at this time that weren't even really making much of a dent. Guys like Shane Douglas and Battle Cat and, gimmicks like that. They weren't really doing much at this point either. So, this card it seems a little light when you think about it, but it is 10 matches. But one of them was the Sapphire nonsense. And then another one features Bad News Brown, who's on his way out the door, a couple squashes. And then the Nikolai Volkov nonsense, obviously. And even Savage Dusty was barely a match. So, kind of an odd card. No match was really that long. Was anything over, I think it was 13 minutes the longest.
Hogan and Earthquake was 13 minutes.
So a very balanced show. Everything was between 5 and 13 basically.
Right.
Nothing too long. So interesting show. They kind of played to the strengths that they had remaining at this point. Definitely one I recommend throwing in for nostalgia purposes. For sentimentality, if you were a fan like I was, just getting into the promotion at this time. But as far as the show itself, objectively grading it, it's a little weak.
Yeah. As for the main event, officially, it's only on one DVD at the moment. It is on 2 old school Coliseum videos. It's on SummerSlam's Greatest Hits and the Best of the WWF SummerSlam. It is also on the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD, and it will be on the upcoming Greatest Cage Matches of All Time DVD, which comes out this Tuesday.
Very good.
So it will be on. It is on that DVD, and it is on the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD, and it is also, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, if you have the little cooler SummerSlam anthology, obviously you have the whole show. So
okay, so with that, let's get into the feedback because we have a ton of it.
Let's do it.
Between our Facebook page and Graham's Facebook page. So first off, on the Place to Be podcast Facebook page, Jeremy Nichols, love SummerSlam 90. Heart Foundation back on top. Warrior Rude in the cage was fun. And on top of that, Boss Man, and the pop that Boss Man gets whacking Earthquake with the step ladder was off the charts. Eric Cafiero, to me, the best part of this whole event was Ted DiBiase buying Sapphire. I still laugh to this day that it was played so great that the only thing is that Sapphire disappears after the show. Also, great tag title match and have a Hearts and Demolition meet. It was also epic. Jason Greenhouse, Bret Hart's 2 Hearts beating his 1 promo, and that's the one I had mentioned. That's what it was. Yeah, the Phil Collins 2 Hearts beating his 1 promo for the tag title match. The tag title match itself was 5 stars. Maybe my favorite tag title match ever. A mink-coated Sapphire. I guess that's better than a polka-dotted spandex Sapphire. A hot Philly Spectrum crowd. Vince and Hot Rod decent on commentary. Kerry Von Erich winning the IC title. Good on paper, but I was glad when Mr. Perfect regained it. Rockers Power and Glory match would have been a gem if Shawn wasn't hurt, causing that match to be booked differently. Sad to see Rick Rude make his final in-ring pay-per-view appearance to WWF. Good things were ahead from him, though, in WCW. One of the better SummerSlams in history. So it looks like
I said, I was going to say, I think I agree with him that Rick Rude definitely upped the work rate once he got to WCW. I concur with that.
Yes, I think a lot of people look at this like I do, the show, just going through this feedback, very rose-colored, sentimental glasses. J. Arsenio D'Amato. The good old days when the titles meant something. The place exploded for our foundation overcoming 3-on-2. Correct there.
Yes.
Corey Ferreira. SummerSlam 90 is a fine event. Our Foundation Demolition match is very good, and the Hearts finally got the tag titles back after several years. The Warrior Rude Cage match was fine, but not as good as their match the year prior. The Hogan program with Earthquake was just a meh program in my opinion. One of Hogan's programs to give his buddies a top-level run. Overall, a decent show and fits in well with the early SummerSlams. Jay Hinchy. It's been a while since I've seen SummerSlam 90, but I remember liking it, this particular SummerSlam pay-per-view. It has, in my opinion, one of the best tag team matches in company history at Demolition and Hot Foundation. I was so glad when Brett Anvil finally won the tag titles again. I also like the Warrior Rude Cage match and the Hogan Earthquake double main events. Texas Tornado winning the IC title for Mr. Perfect was pretty awesome. I hope WWE puts Kerry in the Hall of Fame someday, or is he already in? I can't remember. And of course, he is in. The whole family was inducted.
The whole family's in, yes.
What year was that? 25?
No, I think it was 2009 in Texas.
I always think, that was 25,
with Stone
right?
Cold. Oh, 25. I thought you meant 2005. I'm sorry. Yeah, WrestleMania 20, the year of WrestleMania 25. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 2009 in Texas.
Yes, the whole Von Erich family was inducted.
Yep.
Was Shawn Michaels' knee injury that night legit? I know he's carried out, and yes, it was legit, but he had it prior to this show, so he didn't get injured in this show.
Right.
Also, was it Sapphire's last night that night? No. As I mentioned before, she was on, if you check Graham's site, I believe it was into November. She was working tapings and stuff, so she did stick around, kind of antagonizing Dusty. But then she just kind of vanishes until she obviously passed away. My fondest memory, Barry Rubin, I'm sorry. My fondest memory of SummerSlam 90 was buying the pay-per-view, but missing out on the pre-show. My local cable company, for some reason, did not broadcast the countdown, which was a bummer. However, SummerSlam 90 did not disappoint. Coming from my hometown of Philly, it was great from start to finish. The IC match with Perfect and Tornado was one to remember. It showed how much Perfect was a team player, getting carry over to the WWF audience. Good point there, Barry, that we didn't mention.
Yeah.
Hearts vs. Demolition was awesome, and the steel cage match with Warrior Rude was a classic. I think it will be, on the soon-to-be-released WWE DVD, the greatest cage matches of all time. P.S. I know this is for another podcast, but did you guys catch the Warriors YouTube rant on Hulk Hogan? I won't let something like that sour my fond memories of WWE wrestling. We had talked about this a little bit on one of our headline shows, Barry. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's had a new one since. I've kind of been on the loop on it. I know
me too.
We saw the one where he said about Linda being whored out basically to the wrestlers, and I know Warrior was promising a bigger one, but wasn't sure if he had actually done it yet. So, Karen Polland, SummerSlam 1990 isn't too bad of a show. I'm sorry, Karen Polland.
The Hot Scott.
All right. SummerSlam 90 isn't too bad of a show. In fact, I think it's better than WrestleMania 6. Just kidding, Justin. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, you better be kidding.
The tag title match is great, and the LOD's debut doesn't overshadow the Hearts win. Unfortunately, it all went downhill for Demolition after this. Tornado winning must have been a huge upset at the time, and I love how Perfect and Bobby were all cocky before the match and all bent out of shape afterwards. And that's, of course, a sign of a great heel work. Hogan Earthquake is an underrated match that for some reason featured Hogan ripping Earl Hebner's shirt while at a bear hug. That's right. Forgot about that.
Yeah, I did too.
And Quake getting some nasty welts from the chair shots. The Sapphire angle was ahead of its time, and Warrior Rude feels like filler at the end of the show, which is a shame since Rude deserved a run in the main event after his hard work over the past year. And I actually agree with that. It almost does kind of feel tacked on. I think a lot of it is the 8 minutes it takes to put the cage up, where they're just filling time with shit.
Yes.
And that kind of just makes it it's just they don't really build the anticipation for that match very well. It was just kind of tagged down the end. Probably because there wasn't really much of a feud behind it.
No, that's true. It was really, but you didn't want to screw over Warrior by having Hogan Earthquake last, particularly since the match ended in a DQ. I don't think anybody wanted to see that anyway. So they kind of booked themselves into a semi-corner with trying to give that last match any kind of juice because of that, pretty much for that reason.
All right, and Barry Rubin, I just want to give him a quick shout out as well. He gave us a lot of love on the Facebook page. He loves the 80s stuff and said that we do good contributions to the 80s fans. So
nice.
So he checked back in on this thread and it said also, please avoid playing a loop of Hacksaw Nikolai's rendition of God Bless America. Philly's late great Kate Smith would be disgusted, as I'm sure you were with that. The worst thing Hacksaw did since his WrestleMania 5 booger. And yes, Barry, at your request, we did not play the God Bless America because neither of us wanted to hear it either. So
no, and trust me, I get my fill with every podcast, so we didn't need any extra.
And Barry also said that we make his long car rides go by a lot quicker. So Barry, thank you for all the love.
Thank you very much, Barry. Yes.
Yes, a few more from our page. Matt Farrell, my breakdown of the show. Always a fan of P&G, although this beatdown feels like it took longer than it did. I hated the Texas Tornado and the fact that he beat Perfect made me a mad 9-year-old. I like the Warlord's new look. Crush, Ruin, Demolition for me. I was glad the Hearts took the titles. Robert's the bad news. Ugh, Volkov should have retired years before this. I can't believe he hangs on long enough to be in the corporation. I'm so glad this is Sapphire's last appearance. She was beyond stupid. Although the Hogan Quake match wasn't great, I was excited for it and popped huge when Hogan won. I guess that is what they wanted out of me. I liked last year's matches with Rude and Warrior better than this one. Love the show. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Matt. Terry Johnson. This was the first pay-per-view I ever ordered. I was 9. I thought it was a solid pay-per-view from top to bottom. And Barry Rubin again, bringing the love. I'll be listening, guys, once the podcast is available. So thank you, Barry, and everyone else on our Place to Be Facebook page. And now, of course, we have some comments from the History of WWE Facebook page. Graham Cawthon runs that. Chet Zikowitz. For me personally, it was the best SummerSlam ever. The thought of having Hogan come back from injury was played out great. Tornado upsetting Perfect was good. Hearts Demolition was classic. The only thing I wish Rude should have beaten Warrior. Aaron Summers. Honestly, I don't remember much about it. Hogan beat Quake, Warrior beat Rude. I liked Rude a lot better back then, although he was better in WCW after he left.
I agree.
Chet Zikowitz, WWF should have given Rude a title run. Warrior was pathetic. All right. Very anti-Warrior there.
Yes. Would you and Jesse prep before these questions?
Shannon Stewart, aside from Hart's demo and the opener, not much as far as match quality. Don't remember if Warrior versus Rude was any good, but I know it wasn't as good as their bout at SummerSlam 89. As a kid, the show was memorable for the Sapphire angle and Kerry winning the IC title. Jay Hinchy, it's been a while since I've seen SummerSlam 90, but it's definitely a solid SummerSlam. It has perhaps the best tag match in company history. Actually, this is the same... Yeah, he posted the same thing on this page.
Oh, okay.
All right. Dave Rollins. Jay, thank you for hitting us on both places.
Thank you, Jay.
Dave Rollins. Best tag team match, tag title match ever. The Sapphire shit was interesting and cool, and Hulk Quake was good. Hulk didn't pin Quake because they wanted more of the unfinished business shit to draw at the house shows. Hulk put over Quake in a ridiculous statement. Maybe Hulk could have gotten DQ'd or count out, but as far as that goes. Dave Hall. Always felt this card failed to deliver. The Hart Foundation beating Demolition was awesome, and Kerry Von Erich's IC win was a great moment. Power and Glory make a good pay-per-view debut against the Rockers, and the match tells a good story, but Warrior and Rude failed to recapture the magic of 1 year earlier. Hogan's cheap win was a letdown. If they didn't want Hogan to win clean, why not allow Earthquake some kind of win? And they really missed Jesse on commentary. Piper felt out of place. Graham left us a comment here. Fun show and memorable for the title changes, but that's about it. Possibly the real star of the show is Dusty Rhodes, who really shows off his promo ability. You can't help but get emotionally invested in his new program at DiBiase. I offered her my innocence. She paid me back in scorn. And finally, Steve Riddle. A good pay-per-view. 2 big title changes to get the crowd going. Hulk Hogan's return was big, but the match failed to deliver. Warrior Rude cage match is a lot better than people give it credit for. Weird hearing Piper on commentary instead of Jesse, but he did a good job. So that's it for the feedback. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes.
It seems like a lot of people like this show. Some thought maybe it was just disappointing more than actively bad.
Right.
And of course, a lot of love for that Hart Foundation Demolition match.
Yes, and it deserved it. Best match of the night. So.
So that's it for that show. We will, of course, as we said, be back later this week with our big interview with, sadly now the former ROH World Champion. He lost earlier today to Davey Richards in New York City on their internet pay-per-view. But regardless, he will still be joining us Wednesday night. We have compiled all of your questions that you've left us on our Facebook pages and on the blog of Doom to all our great listeners. And, of course, those we will be reading. You still have a couple days. If you have any other questions for Eddie Edwards, we will ask him. I'm also going to be getting in contact with him tomorrow and make sure to see if he has any boundaries or anything specific he wants to talk about. So
yes,
we're really looking forward to talking to Eddie. Seems like a cool guy. I'm sure he's got a lot of experiences he'll be sharing with us. So we're looking forward to that. Of course, next week we'll be back with Survivor Series to wrap up the 1990 year in pay-per-view. And we'll have to come up with a little cool little theme pod as well.
Yes.
To discuss. So, you have anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
We will close the door and shut the vault, and we will open it up next week. Again, our big podcast with Eddie Edwards later this week. Hope everyone enjoyed the show, and throw it in. It's worth a look every once in a while, but again, not as good as past shows, past SummerSlams.
Any more creepy double entendre stories you want to?
No, I will not be. No, I don't. I don't wish to walk through the tulips with Hawk. I just want no.
You don't want to. You're gonna. I hope you're gonna close the blinds and put the binoculars down with the person that.
Yes, I am.
The girl that you're stalking across the way.
Yes, no, I know. Yes.
And of course, we're gonna leave you tonight with Scott's new theme song, "The Stalker National Anthem" by LL Cool J. Hey Lover. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up things for today. So we will be back later in the week with Eddie Edwards. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you soon.
Peace.